big sky, big potential. In association with Mills and Reeve, this is Eastern Promise. Achieving more together.
We're back! According to those keen observers of the human condition, Peaches and Herb reunited, and it feels so good. Reunited because we understood there's one perfect fit, and sugar, the east of England, is it. Welcome to episode 90 of the Eastern Promise podcast. And where else could we start but building the Norwich Food Science Supercluster, where Eastern Promise assembled leaders in research, academia, food, farming, and local government from across the Norwich ecosystem and beyond. We'll be hearing the opening speeches and the first panel of the event on identifying the skills requirements for a food science supercluster. And finally, where would you go for a weekend away in the east of England? Let's run down your choice getaways in an all-new crowd sorcery. A great deal of the global best-in-class scientific research undertaken on the Norwich Research Park is tied in some way to food, whether looking at crops, fruits and vegetables, nutrition, gut health and even soil. But that's not all. Sitting just one A47 junction to the west is the Norfolk Showground, home of the Royal Norfolk Agricultural Association, representing farming and food. And there's also Eastern College, our leading 200-hectare agricultural college. One more junction westward on the A47 is the Food Enterprise Park. Here, Condimentum mills the world-famous Coleman's mustard. The Broadland Food Innovation Centre acts as a focal point for the Food Innovation Cluster. And Fisher Farms produces salads and herbs all year round. That is a unique collection of assets, and easily has the makings of a food science supercluster. In this episode, we'll start by bringing you the skills panel, whom I'll introduce you to in a moment. First, let's hear the warm welcome to the Quadram Institute from its director, Professor Ian Charles OBE.
So welcome, everyone. I'm delighted to have you here. It's an absolute pleasure to have you at the Quadram Institute. A lot of people ask me, Quadram Institute, where on earth did that name come from? So after all, does not a rose by any other name smell as sweet, misquoting Shakespeare? Well, of course it does, but there is a power in name. And the name reflects something that's very important here on the Norwich Research Park, and that's about partnership. So if you look at the quad part, that's the important part for me. It's about the four partners that initially formed the Institute, and that is the hospital, the NNUH hospital, the university, the old Institute of Food Research that was here, and the BBSRC, that's the Biotechnology and Biological Sciences Research Council, part of UKRI. So thus, four partners, and thus Quadram. So I think the name will stick, the name has stuck, and I want the name to have, to act as a hub that actually represents that partnership between those four entities that formed it. Now, so here's the Quadram. What's it all about? What are we doing at Quadram that's so important and so special and relevant for today? Well, I'd like to see us at the very center of this food health network. So the Quadram Institute is on a mission to look at the impact of food on health and food innovation, and how we can sort out a whole number of problems that we see impacting the NHS. We are living longer, but we're not living healthier. How can we actually fix that as a food, part of the food ecosystem, part of this great way we need to harness the skills we've got here? So we're on a journey now to deliver success in this area. What does that actually mean? Well, it means we, as part of a partnership, are also on this marvellous site here in Norwich. And you can see there are representatives now of the hospital, the university, the John Innes Centre, the Earlham Institute, and Nick representing the Sainsbury's Centre, all coming together, all within a square kilometre, to actually look at some of these big issues. And what are these big issues? Well, we all know what those are going to impact us. We've got a massively growing population. We have the impact of climate change. We have the impact of new diseases as a consequence of those changes, perhaps in climate conditions. All of this needs to be stirred into the pot. When Sir Patrick Vallance opened the Institute, he described us as a very big jewel in the crown of life sciences. And life sciences is much more than just what happens in the biomedical field. It's about all of this. I describe this as our highway to health, and we go through all the way from soil, the plants, the soil, the ecology of the soil, all the way through to the plant products that are processed into food, the way that interacts and processed into the very ingredients of those foods that impact our health. How are we going to look at all of that and get a broader understanding of how we can impact health? Thank you very much.
Professor Ian Charles OBE. And now, I have great pleasure in bringing you the keynote address from George Freeman MP, Member of Parliament for Mid Norfolk and a former Science Minister.
Well, morning all. Thanks, Mike, for having us and for putting this together. You will be pleased to know that I'm going to be quite controversial. Having been fired twice, resigned twice, rehired 5 times, and then finally stepped back from government in the autumn, I've done it not to go quietly into that good night, but to up the volume and up the ante on this mission. So I've got some quite specific things I'm going to say about the opportunity of this cluster, by which I mean the Norwich Research Park, by which I mean the Eastern region, by which I mean the UK in the global science innovation economy. I want to just start, Mike, by thanking you for putting this together. In this sector, there are lots of conferences, there are lots of events, there are lots of things, and frankly, often at times, I'm sure that Daniel, my good friend, feels the same way. Not all of them add that much value all the time. This one, I think, does. And your podcast, Mike, and the work you're doing to raise the quality of the awareness of what's going on here in the East is really key, and that's why I was so keen to come and support you. It's great to be back. I say back because 17 years ago I was here as a thinner, hairier, and equally frustrated younger man, and there was a conference about how we boost Norfolk's economic development. Chris Starkey remembers it well, and the proposal in front of us was that we should call it Normal for Norfolk. And I stood up and said, as a Conservative parliamentary candidate for the not yet existent seat of Mid Norfolk, so I was not very influential, and said, look, I've had a 15-year starting companies in Cambridge. I think we're sitting on a goldmine here of food, medicine, energy, the bioeconomy. Could I, with respect, suggest that Normal for Norfolk is not the right strapline? We should be selling ourselves as the garden of Cambridge, the Eastern region economy. In San Diego, Shanghai, Singapore, people do not care about Normal for Norfolk. And if they look it up, they'll find it's a joke. We should be bigger and bolder than to sell ourselves as a joke. We should be selling ourselves as the science park for the global challenge of feeding 9 billion people, sustainably turning agriculture into a low-carbon emitting activity, driving the energy revolution that we urgently need after 4 of the hottest months on record, the floods all around this county. This is urgent, and this campus, this county, this region, I think, is the Silicon Valley of the bioeconomy, and that's the story that we should be telling, and it's a story, Mike, that you, I think, are trying to encourage us to tell. And I was jeered at the time. I remember it very well. And it was partly because of that I've committed so hard in standing to be the MP for Mid Norfolk to try and do that rare thing of being an MP and a minister on one mission, and it's the same mission. If we can unlock the potential of this campus, this city, this county, this region, then Mid-Norfolk will move from being the long-neglected rural backwater in which pensioners and commuters are dumped in neglected villages to commute in congestion, frustration and pollution to jobs elsewhere, to a vibrant small business innovation economy in which every village has small businesses back in converted farm buildings. We're properly digitally connected, and when you need to have a business meeting, you can cycle or hydrogen scooter to the railway station hub, and that Cambridge-Norwich Railway would become the Innovation Express. Each station, with plants growing through the ceiling at the moment, would become a 5G connected business hub, and we could really unlock the potential of this region and stop, rather than dump 400,000 houses into Cambridge, connect Cambridge better to the eastern region and really connect a food, medicine, energy economy with digital connectivity. And I'm still on that mission. And through the last 14 years of government, as First Minister for Life Science, First Minister for Agri-Tech, First Minister for Transport Tech, and then Minister for Science, Research, Tech and Innovation, you will have noticed, I hope, that I've stuck to that and constantly made that case. And my constituents are beginning to realise that this is not a distraction. Because the other day in Watton, and by the way, when Watton starts to feel part of this Eastern region innovation economy, we're really beginning to win. Nowhere embodies being more left behind. I mean, Watton dreams of getting to the A1065. It dreams of a bus link to the A11. I mean, seriously. And at Wayland College now, they're running courses on what? Agri-tech, on digital warehouse management, on all those kind of ancillary skills that support the innovation economy. So this really matters, both to this area and I think to this country and to the globe. So let me just say something about each of those very briefly. The UK opportunity globally, the opportunity for this region and specifically for this park. And I'm going to be quite controversial about things that we haven't done well enough that we need to do better. So the opportunity globally, you've all heard me talk about the science superpower. I'm pleased that everyone's using that phrase, but headline, spoiler message, we are not a science superpower at the moment. My message is that is the opportunity. We're an academic powerhouse, winning prizes, congratulating ourselves, but we're not properly converting that into the big solutions for global challenges. The world has to double food production in the next, 25 years, shatter its carbon emissions. We need to rapidly invest in population health globally to avoid future pandemics, and we need to help the world get off coal and fossil fuels and oil fast and unlock a much more sustainable energy model for the globe. These are big global challenges, and they're urgent. This country is sitting on, and we are sitting here right in the heart of, some of the most exciting bioscience, and we have been terrible as a nation, really terrible at properly commercialising it. Why? There's a whole raft of reasons, but we have to stop it, and we have to start properly unlocking the value of it. There is a wall of global investment out there, and I mean trillions. I've sat with people from the Middle East, from America, from the Far East, from Asia, billions. People saying, I want to invest 4 billion into the food, medicine, energy economy in the UK in the next 5-10 years. Where is it? It's not here. And my frustration, having helped to get nearly £1 billion of public investment into science research here, I was incredibly proud. My first role as the Minister for Life Science was to open the Centrum building. It's my only plaque, and I couldn't think of anywhere I'd rather have it. I got the money here and came and helped and supported you. It's brilliant, but guys, we have got to turn this into a science, business, innovation and industry park. And I'm really worried we're going to turn this place into a housing estate and there won't be any room for any companies and incubators. We've got to have a network of small businesses, fast-growing businesses, scale-up businesses and bigger businesses. We need the food majors here. We need the bioeconomy majors here. We need them investing here. It's becoming an academic silo, disconnected from the industry and the economic sectors that we need to be supporting. It's a tough message, I know, and I'm here to help. We have got to connect better to the food, medicine, and energy sectors that are desperate for the innovations that we are building here. And nationally, that mission, I think there are 3 big things we have to do. We have got to lead in regulation. I'm looking at Jonathan Jones. He first showed me the blight-resistant potato here, 18 years ago? 18 years. And I led the campaign. I got Boris to speak about the blight-resistant potato on the steps of Number 10. We're too slow. We need to be setting out now using the one Brexit freedom that excites me. It's the only one, which is that we could set out a fast pathway for nutraceuticals, for gene editing, it'll be the place in the world. People say, you've got to go to the UK. They just set out testbed sandboxes to rapidly commercialise in these new fast-growing areas, from autonomous vehicles to drones to agri-tech. Secondly, co-investment. We still haven't properly built a national infrastructure for unlocking that money. When Dominic Johnson, the Trade Minister, and I left a meeting with these big investors, they were kind of like, well, who do we ring now? It's not, we have to make sure they can pick up the phone and say, is that the Norwich Research? Is that the Norwich Cluster? I'd like to invest $1 billion in the next 3 years. I'd like to build a building, an institute, support some fellowships. Somebody needs to be on the end of that phone. And then thirdly, clusters. And you will have seen that I pushed very hard for Whitehall to begin to recognise that it's not just Cambridge. It's not just Cambridge, Oxford, Imperial. All around the country, here, Yorkshire Bioeconomy, Leeds Digital Health, Newcastle Data City, Edinburgh Superfast Computing, Aberdeen Clean Tech, Glasgow Satellites. I could go on. There are 30. And we've just launched a digital cluster map. It's the beginning. We need to really start to think about how we can grow them properly. Secondly, so if you look at this region in the east, we all know the opportunity. I came here on one of my cluster visits, didn't go to Cambridge quite deliberately, and called it the ABCD cluster, the Agri, Bio, Clean Tech and Digital cluster, and tried to tell a story about if you take Cambridge off the map, folks, you would see something here which is getting lost because of Cambridge. Now, the trick is to connect the two better, but we need to tell that story about that donut, parallelogram, that cluster here in the east, which is what you're trying to do. And I would suggest that the food, medicine, energy, bioeconomy story is a very powerful way of telling it. And I think the three big challenges here in the east are connectivity. It is ridiculous and shaming that 12 years on, from 14 years on, from when Liz Truss, who did go on to become Prime Minister, Liz and I stood at Ely Junction and said, we have to get the Cambridge-Norwich Railway to half hourly, we have to upgrade it. 10 years since David Sainsbury and I said, let's create Agritech East, and we were very lucky to hire the brilliant Belinda, who's done brilliant work in growing the Agritech East economy. We still have a Dad's Army chuff train that, by the way, Network Rail continually still want to stop. They want to close it. Charles Clarke stopped them closing it and asked me if I'd keep up the fight. That line should be the Innovation Express, a fast train with great coffee, 5G, from Norwich through to Cambridge, through to Oxford on the East-West Rail that I got landed when I was at Department of Transport. That's it. That connectivity is really key. Secondly, energy. It's extraordinary. We've already built, and we're now going to double it, treble it, the world's biggest wind farm just offshore. And we're despoiling the coast with a mad process of substations for each wind farm and individual cabling and pyloning because of the 1989 Electricity Act. Competition, no collaboration. We should be building an offshore grid and bringing it in and building the world's biggest hydrogen plant at somewhere like Harwich and or Bacton or Sizewell. Those substations, by the way, the size of Wembley. So we're ruining our coast for a completely disconnected model to take the southern North Sea energy to London through a region where we don't yet have proper digital connectivity, and we certainly don't have a proper digital electricity sector, a clean tech grid that will allow us to lead the way in farms generating electricity, businesses saving electricity, that micro energy revolution. So I think there's an energy piece here in the east that we've got to grip. We shouldn't just celebrate selling sandwiches to the people building the wind farms out in the coast. We should be building a connected, vibrant entrepreneurial energy economy here in the east. And thirdly, skills. We really need to make sure that kids leaving schools in Wymondham, but even more importantly in Yarmouth, in Cromer, in Thetford, in the tough outspots of this county, this region, they need a skills passport, and they need to, at 12, 13, 14, begin to realise the exciting jobs that are being created here, and we need to put them on the T-level in the apprenticeship journey, degree apprenticeships, and we need to give them a passport. I mean a digital passport with free travel on it and their skills accreditation, and show them, introduce them to the companies in this sector. So those are my three pitches for this region in the east. And here in the park, when I was here on the investment fund 20 years ago, I suggested food, medicine, energy was the opportunity for us, and you've done it. It is extraordinary, the research that's going on here, really fantastic. And if you look at the work on gut biome, on clean energy, on agri-tech, this is the great global challenge. We have somehow got to find a way to avoid a mass global obesity crisis, a mass net zero crisis from high carbon emitting agriculture, and find a way of living more healthily, and we've got to export it around the world really fast. Here, as Minister of State for Science, Research, Tech and Innovation, I've been around the world on your behalf to the world's greatest campuses. I've never seen one as strong as this in that sector. It is genuinely world-class. We say that about many things, but it's not true of all. This really is. And my suggestion, my 3 points here are industry. We have got to make sure that we have Unilever, Danone, we have all the big food majors here. Not just here today, hopefully they're here today, but we need to have an annual conference here where they all come here. They need to have offices here. They need to be living and breathing here, running fellowships here, and growing investment funds here. Secondly, co-investment. How much is this park pulling in private sector co-investment each year? I don't think we know the answer. We need to identify that number and then work out how we double, treble, and quadruple it. We should be making it easy for people to build institutes and labs here. Why is government building the most expensive buildings in the country? When I used to start biotech companies, a third of the money I used to give always went on a building. You need to start leasing buildings and use that precious capital for the only value-adding activity, which is research. So we need to get much better at letting private sector partners come in, build buildings, run fellowships, fund the bus networks, really help them co-invest properly and not think of it as a public sector campus that would like to do some spinning out, but think of it as a deep public-private partnership. And my third is the triangle of growth. Cambridge has shown what not to do. We do not want to become the world's biggest car park visible from space, which is why I've started calling it the Norfolk Research Triangle. People say, well, where's the Norfolk Research Triangle? I say, well, it's between Dereham, Norwich, Wymondham, and it's growing out towards Cambridge. And that area, I think we've got to set out a vision for bike routes, hydrogen scooters, e-scooters, hydrogen buses, for a way of life that is attractive. Because when you're tapping the CEO of a company in San Diego on the shoulder and saying, can you come and run a company here in Norfolk? If they come and they see a flooded A47, massive congestion, rat running, gridlock, it's not very attractive. They need to see a place that looks like a science park. And they need to be able to come and live here in this area and connect to this extraordinary campus. So those are my very provocative suggestions, Mike. I'm here because I want to help, and I'm out of government because I think there's a huge opportunity as an advocate, having been your minister, to come back and help make all this happen and to attract that investment and to make sure that we turn this into something quite quickly that people say, you want to get on the fast train to the Norwich Research Park. That's where they're building the next generation of food, medicine, energy, industrial biotech that is really shaping the global markets of tomorrow. Thank you.
My thanks to Ian and George. And now, let's hear from our skills panel.
Mark Nicholas, I'm the Managing Director of the Royal Norfolk Agricultural Association, and I also, with one or two other colleagues in the room here, play a slightly wider role in Norfolk as a member of the Norfolk Lieutenancy.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Nova Fairbank. I'm the Chief Executive for Norfolk Chambers of Commerce, and we are the lead for the Local Skills Improvement Plan for Norfolk and Suffolk.
Hello, I'm Catherine Richards. I'm really proud to be the principal at East Norfolk Sixth Form College, which is in Great Yarmouth, and I'm also a trustee of the Royal Norfolk Agricultural Association and a trustee of the Food and Farming Discovery Trust.
Good morning, everybody. I'm David Maguire. I'm the Vice-Chancellor at the University of East Anglia, just on Norwich Research Park.
Your starter for 10, Professor Maguire. How well placed, and I think the answer is very, but how well placed is the University of East Anglia to provide the skills that a food supercluster will need?
Well, let me begin by firstly saying that I think people are absolutely at the heart of any transformation that's going to occur in this economy, culture, and society. As a region, I think it's pretty obvious that we cannot succeed unless we have high skills, high productivity, and high wages. We must have a strategy which is a race to the top and not a drift to the bottom. So central to all of that, I think, is upskilling and cross-skilling people at all levels, from nursery and reception class provision right through to advanced degrees and lifelong learning. Somehow, I think, we've got to make education, learning and skills development exciting, trendy and compelling at all levels. And I think a particular area of focus needs to be those white working class boys who live in some of the left behind parts of our community. I think others have got good social and cultural infrastructure which can enable them to trade up, but those that haven't, from disadvantaged backgrounds, really need our help, support and investment. So I think it's pretty obvious to everybody in the audience here that this particular region plays an absolutely vital role in the UK's food production. But it's also pretty obvious, isn't it, that we're in a period of transition. Post-Brexit, we've got a change in subsidies, we've got different trade arrangements. One of the key roles of the University of East Anglia in this area is to support development of a workforce which is fit for the future. people who are capable of leading change and working in that sort of high skills, high wage, high growth economy. And one of the ways we do that is we are both a local organisation and a global organisation. We bring people to East Anglia from, literally all over the world. And so one of the greatest inputs to this region is the talent, the skills, the people, and indeed all the money that they spend who are brought into this region by the university. We bring really capable people here. We try our best to educate and train them and upskill them very well. And then we set them loose in the wilds of East Anglia. And we hope and expect that they will do their thing. So they start new businesses, they add great productivity to existing businesses, and they fulfill an important role in our very much needed public services. And one of the things we concentrate on is not just creating people who are academically and technically expert, though that's something I think we do pretty well, but we also try to build into our staff the critical technical, business and other soft skills which allow them to hit the ground running and to be a big success. The University of East Anglia is a core foundation partner of the Norwich Research Park, and we've already heard how important that is as a centre of global expertise in food, nutrition and health. And we are working very hard to ensure that the park is both a success and it expands into the future. And I can say more about that perhaps later on, but I've probably used up my time for now.
Thank you very much. Nova, I'm going to come to you now. The Norfolk Chamber have been doing so much work on the LSIP. What has that work told the Chamber, about not just the range of careers in food-related disciplines, but also the needs of employees in our area?
So the LSIP is the Local Skills Improvement Plan. It is designed to put employers at the heart of the skills agenda. Obviously, Norfolk Chambers is not a skills expert, but we are experts in connecting with the business community and supporting and collaborating. So we have spent quite a lot of time looking at what the challenges are from an employer perspective, but working very closely in collaboration with our training providers, our colleges, our local authorities to ensure that we are not reinventing the wheel, but we are actually connecting the dots to support that overall skills landscape. We are very lucky, Norfolk and Suffolk are very good at collaboration, and particularly on the skills agenda, has been something we've done for years. Part of the initial work we did for the LSIP, it's in two parts, Phase 1 and Phase 2. Phase 1 was understanding what that landscape looked like. We took 4 deep dives, one into agri-tech and food processing, one into net zero, and we put cross-cutting themes across it of soft skills and workforce digital skills. Particularly on the agri-tech side, the results were expected, but quite stark in terms of the results. Recruitment was a challenge at all levels, right across the piece, from very low-level roles right up to senior management. The automation agenda was creating a shortfall in engineers, which was a big challenge, both in terms of delivery and in terms of future innovation, which made the digital and STEM skills absolutely vital for anything we do going forwards. T-levels were absolutely not understood by employers to the point where they were not engaging, and it's a challenge that a lot of the providers are seeing, getting employers to engage, particularly in the agri-tech and the food processing sector, at looking at how that actually practically works in the sort of the world of work. The priorities for the sector were data analysis. You only need to look at a modern-day tractor to understand it's not just about driving up and down a field anymore. Your ability to understand the data, to use the tech that's on board, and to actually understand the results of that analysis and put them into effect was huge. Health and safety and well-being were massive, and engineering training to cope with the advanced technology and machinery, again, is common sense. Land, waste and water management, as the government moved the regulations and things changed, were also really important. So we need to do more to support employers, but we also need to do more to support employers to connect to those providers. The work that we're going to be doing in Phase 2 is continuing to work with employers, continuing to work with providers and the local authorities. But we want to also reshape the agri-tech group that's out there as it transitions from the LEP into the local authorities as part of devolution. We need it to be more employer-centric and to focus more on the emerging trends rather than the traditional agricultural training. Soft skills was massive as well. Key ones that came across from all employers in all sectors was communication, teamwork, problem solving, time management, and leadership, all of which to a certain extent are being delivered, but what we were seeing was much more around how do we deliver this in bite-sized chunks. The workforce digital skills, 54% of businesses said they needed to be better. They really need to see bite-sized training. Whilst if you look at nearly every single provider, there's a level of all of that going into the provision that's already out there. So we need to make sure there's more opportunity, and we need employers to understand that it's not necessarily a college that should be delivering it. If you have a specific piece of training, then actually you should be investing in potentially an ITP if you're not getting the information that you want or the level of bite size that colleges can do. The colleges have a real funding challenge when it comes to bite size. Social media for marketing, Microsoft applications, that's how to use Office Suite. And that came out loud and clear from the work we did. So it's basic stuff that needed doing. Website updates and development, the specialist packages such as CAD and data entry, so CRM, some really quite basic fundamentals that you would think would be bog standard are clearly not coming through. It's not being taught in schools. It's not the job of the colleges to teach that. As employers, we need to work on that as well. Big one across the whole piece was the common language. Employers were going to ask for provision for a specific thing that they needed as an employer, and the colleges and the providers were coming back with, oh, well, we can do X. And the employers were walking away because they didn't realise what the colleges and the providers were offering them was actually what they were asking. So that language piece is quite a barrier, and we need to break through that. I will stop at that point.
Thank you very much, Neil. Catherine, now, if you scan the QR code on the back of the badges or the cards that we gave you with your name on at the start, you'll go to our most recent episode of the podcast, which was recorded at the John Innes Conference Centre just over the way, and you will hear in that a number of people telling you about their careers on the John Innes Centre, on the Norwich Research Park, none of whom are scientists. Now, FE plays a hugely important role in the food science ecosystem, catering, engineering, as we've heard, all manner of things. Could you give us an idea of the width of those roles, the sort of opportunities an expanded food science ecosystem could potentially offer your students?
Thank you. At East Norfolk, we have over 1,600 young people, most of whom are studying A-levels, T-levels. They are studying a range of practical and academic qualifications. And what I would say in terms of the opportunities that this ecosystem represents, it's absolutely enormous for them. We've already talked about white working class boys. I can tell you that one of my students this week was nominated for an Ingenuity Award for T-level in design and manufacturing and engineering. He's got to go to Birmingham and he will be there as one of the top in the country. If I said to you, one of my students came and learned Mandarin and is now going to be travelling all across the world learning Thai and Mandarin and travelling to all sorts of locations to learn about absolutely everything. Or another of my students that is working in Silicon Valley. They're here in Great Yarmouth. So what I would be saying to you is this is such an opportunity not only for young people in Great Yarmouth, but I know Jerry White sat in the audience there. He's got all his students in Norwich. We have so many opportunities that we can build on. The issue for young people is they don't necessarily make the links with the employers. And it's interesting, the employers are saying they're not making the links with the young people. Well, it's both ways. My young people know about renewables now, and I have to take my hat off to all of the offshore industries, to all of the major companies that have got involved. In fact, the one that has been nominated, he is going to go into the renewables industry. He knew that from probably about the age of 11. At the college, we are putting lots and lots of innovation into what we offer for high school children. So we've had the Norwich Science Festival actually hosted at the college this week, where we're teaching everybody about science, about food, about wind farms. but actually that's down as young as 5 years old. So each year we have 2,000 primary children who come to East Norfolk to learn about the opportunities for them. And the best way, and certainly that's why I became involved, and you'll hear more from Mark later, with the Royal Norfolk Agricultural Association and the FFDT, and Jerry and I are both members of those organisations, is to actually give young people the idea of what's possible for them. So I personally, because I absolutely love everything to do with agri-tech and agriculture, took students to see robots milking cows. It was absolutely fascinating for our students. It made them think about new careers. We've also taken them to see parsnip and food production. We've started talking to them about livestock management. We've also introduced land management into the college. All of these ways are helping our students to understand. They understand what it means to live in Great Yarmouth and know that you've got a wind farm just offshore. They can see the wind farms. They know what happens. What they don't know at the moment, which is why I think it's so important, is how land, soil, food science is going to affect them in the future. And in fact, more recently I took, and it's an awful thing, I took a group of our young women to help build their confidence along to a farm. And when we got there, one of the jobs that they had to do was feed pigs. They hadn't seen pigs. I mean, that seems ridiculous. They live in Great Yarmouth. They're surrounded by some of the most brilliant, pig farms, the pork industry, the food science that goes into that, and they'd never been in a field with a pig. And some of them didn't even want to get involved to start with. After a few minutes, understanding, working with the farmer, everything's fine. But I think that, for me, is where the challenge is. The employers want all these skills, and we certainly want to provide them. Jerry and I spend a lot of meetings talking about how we can help young people, but equally we need to get these young people into the spaces to see what happens when you're in a factory, to see what happens when a cow is being milked by a robot. I can tell you all about that. Mark can tell you as well. And that's my message. I think it's such an opportunity. There are some absolutely brilliant, clever young people living in Great Yarmouth, and you want them here and then helping to set up businesses.
I'll just speak to that briefly, if I may. And Julie Schofield knows this. James Allen knows this, and Scott Cogman knows this, because they were there at Sink the City, not this year, but last year, when I was there as well. Your students were there, and from people who basically, one of them in particular wouldn't say boo to a goose and had to be sort of wanted to pitch, was sort of shuffled on stage by her friends. By the end of it, she was blowing everyone away, leading the presentation. They absolutely blew me away. UEA, a huge part of helping that happen as well. And so I really take my hat off to you for that. That was wonderful. And Mark, a huge leader in agriculture, and it's a key part of the food and drink ecosystem, incomplete without it. And the RNAA has been so active, particularly in recent years, on that. The key theme of this year's Royal Norfolk show is young achievers. Absolutely perfect. And the RNAA has got an ongoing Norfolk Voices for Norfolk's Future initiative. You've got your 2.3 million food hall, your market garden for the Norfolk Showground. So it's such exciting developments. What do they mean for the future of agriculture in Norfolk, Mark?
Well, Mike, and ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you. Just before I get into that, just stick a hand up if you've been to the Royal Norfolk Show. OK, so you know what we do for 2 days of the year. What I just want to draw out is that actually the Royal Norfolk Agricultural Association is perhaps an example of one of the longest running collaborations in Norfolk, which can trace its roots directly back to the Holcombe sheep shearings of the late 1790s, early 1800s. And that collaboration between industry and best practice continues through to 2024 with the Royal Norfolk Show. And my colleagues have already mentioned innovations such as the STEM village at the show. So our primary objective as an organisation is to promote and support food farming and countryside. Promote and support food farming and countryside. And we are really, in nature, a charitable, not-for-profit organisation. So here's perhaps the first point, that there is hard power, there's soft power. And I think I see many of the organisations talked about so far, the university, the organisations within NRP, colleges and education, is very much the hard power. They're big organisations, they've got resources, and they can conduct change. Well, the RNAA is perhaps a good example of soft power. And we sit at the heart of Norfolk. I think it's fair to say we have fingers in all sorts of pies. But what we are able to do is to convene people. And that is perhaps our greatest strength, whether it be the Royal Norfolk Show, 80,000 people, 700 businesses, over 3,000 animals gathering for 2 days in a field on the edge of Norwich is insane. Yet that single event has an economic output to the benefit of Norfolk of over £20 million a year. Isn't that the same as the devolution figure promised? At the other end of the scale, we're able to pull together any kind of convening that will be of industry and community good, whether that's running with partners an event called the Norfolk Skills and Careers Festival to become the Festival of Knowledge this year, headed by the Chambers, 7,500 youngsters, perhaps their only exposure in the course of their middle schooling career to a range of industry sectors in Norfolk. We convene for organisations that are part of the NRP, and in September we were thrilled to work with the John Innes Centre. John Clark rang up and said, I need farmers. We need to inform the next 20 years' worth of the JIC trials programme. How many farmers do you want, John? It's not a problem. We can get them. We can bring them in. So at the heart of Norfolk, what I'm saying, and we're looking to the future in all of this, I think, Mike, is that there is a very, very useful organisation that has an awful lot of soft power, but has this ability to convene. And with skills in mind to inform, influence and inspire. So the show, 123 schools will come and take part in the Royal Norfolk show, and a number of those from London. In total, that's about 12,500 young people. The Food and Farming Discovery Trust is our own education vehicle, has now directly engaged over 25,000 youngsters within the course of 2 days. All of this designed to make young people aware where their food comes from, what does healthy living actually look like, and what is happening in the fields around their villages and towns. Because my worry is that whilst organisations here are doing an amazing world-class job racing ahead into the unknown, there is a risk that we leave the public behind, that we leave young people behind who are not catching up, not catching on to the technological developments and the innovation that is at pace. Because my colleagues are so right, farming is not about driving a tractor up and down a field. Farming is about a whole range of highly digitised, complex skills that are now required as they are in many other environments. So young achievers, Mike, you mentioned. So the Royal Norfolk Show is perhaps the greatest example of the county convening with those statistics that I've given you. And actually, it is the largest two-day county show in the UK. And we should be really, really proud of that. And it's multi-sector. Roots in agriculture, but it's multi-sector. So we have the freedoms to say, OK, across the county, what should we be doing? And this year, it is about celebrating young people. It's as simple as that. It is putting in place the opportunities, the mechanisms for thousands of young people to come to the show, to feel valued, to show off what they can do, their achievements. And the county will say to those people, those youngsters, well done. We're really pleased that you're here and that you're part of us. Norfolk Voices for Norfolk Futures is a specific initiative that gives young people a voice. And when I say young people in this context, it's generally people in their early 20s who are still in education or now getting into the farming industry. Because one of the biggest challenges within the industry at the moment is the issue of succession within families who farm for a very long time. But perhaps more pronounced is younger people trying to get into the industry who have no links into agriculture. And we've developed this initiative to specifically target grant and bursary opportunities for youngsters who want to get into farming but don't know how to do it because they're not from a farming family. And we were thrilled to send half a dozen youngsters to the Oxford Farming Conference on an all-paid scholarship who are not in the industry but trying to get in to go and have their horizons broadened thanks to the generosity of the RNEA and our supporters. So these small tactical measures can have a life-changing impact on young people who we're really trying to take forward and champion. You asked about the food hall, and I think you got a digit wrong, I'm afraid, Mike. It's 3.3 million in total, but let's not that stand between friends. And George, you mentioned the triangle of Dereham, of Wymondham, of Norwich. Well, what sits at the heart of that triangle? Norfolk Showground. If you look at the government's website, when the Greater Norwich Food Enterprise Zone was announced in 2015, it says that zone is centred on Norfolk Showground. The work at the Food Enterprise Park at Honingham has been extraordinary. The development here at UEA and the NRP equally so. So what about Norfolk Showground? Setting the context of what I've described as our ability to convene, to do an awful lot in the space of developing skills. by simply bringing people together and informing and inspiring. So we have a project on the table, and you've mentioned it. It is the Norfolk Food Hall. I've taken the liberty of leaving something on your seat about this, because I think this is a valid project for discussion. If we're really going to be bold, if we're really going to change words to actions, then I would propose to you that what we also need to be doing, or one of the problems we need to be solving, is making sure that the public and young people are engaged with the idea of a food science cluster and how that develops in Norfolk. So we think that a project called the Norfolk Food Hall, a showcase for the hugely diverse range of Norfolk food and drink produce, enabling small producers to bring their products to market, providing opportunities for communities to feel engaged and informed about where their food comes from, because it will tell the story of food and farming in Norfolk. It will tell the story of food production, is an incredibly powerful proposition. And at the risk of running into investment, I'll leave it there for now. But this is a project that is 2/3 ready to go. If we can find the funding for the final tranche, then we'll be pressing the green light, and we will be delivering a bold step for the showground, but vitally important for Norfolk and the missing jigsaw, to my mind, in that triangle that George has described.
Thank you very much, Mark. Nova, could I just jump back to you before I come to David as well? You recently held your big debate, which I was irritated to have missed. But is there anything that specifically came out of that, do you feel, that's relevant to these discussions today?
I think it was the willingness of people to actually come together and work as a collaboration. I think the comments that Catherine made was very much around how do we work together, how do we connect employers to providers to young people, but we also need to remember it's not just young people. You have an ageing workforce, so how do we upskill or reskill some of the ones that are, say, used to doing a more manual job? How do we bring them into the 21st century in the digital world? There's a huge amount of opportunity there, and the results of phase 1 of the LSIP resulted in 4.7 million been awarded through the LSIF, the Local Skills Improvement Fund, across Norfolk and Suffolk. There's a huge opportunity there where we are working closely with the providers, with employers, to ensure that this actually moves forward and that we do inspire the students that are coming out of our colleges, that we as a business community are showcasing the potential of Norfolk, and you only need to walk around this campus to understand what that opportunity looks like.
David, I think the UEA has such a pivotal role to play because it really spans the whole gamut of activity, from people like Alex and Julie all the way through to training the next generation of scientists. How do you see, that role evolving as time goes on? How do you see the UEA boosting its role, underpinning the entire gamut of what we do here?
Well, we are an ambitious institution. We're acutely aware of the important contribution we make to the local culture, local economy and society. And we've just been through a big exercise looking at our strategy for the next 6 years to 2030. And we've examined that and asked some fundamental questions and realised that there's 3 important things about the University of East Anglia, the 3 Ps we call it. It's our prestige. We are a very highly regarded university, typically rank in the top quartile of universities in this country, one of the best university systems in the world. In terms of our research, at the last national exercise, we were rated 17th, the quality of our research, 17th of over 250 organisations in this country. So we do some things very well. Secondly, our people. People really like working at the university, really like living here. And I think one of our strengths is the way we bond together, the way we look after all of our students, all of our staff, and all of our stakeholders in the community. And the third thing we're incredibly proud of is place. It's not an accident that we're in Norwich, and Norwich and Norfolk are amazing places to have a university, and we're proud of everything that brings into the university, but also everything that we can do to support that. So looking ahead, we're now in our 60th year. We hope to be around for at least 60 years further, and we're concentrating on 3 main themes in terms of our work. We've got a group of people who are literally the world experts in climate change, climate science, a cluster of over 100 people across the university. We actually got some people right now on the Sir David Attenborough boat in the Antarctic Sir David Attenborough, better known as colloquially as the Boaty McBoatface, who are launching sea gliders underneath the water. They travel for 6 months, sending measurements back to our campus, actually, to record measurements of the sea characteristics and use that to inform sea ice and climate change. Just to pick one simple example. So climate change is a big thing for us. Secondly, creativity, digital creativity in its widest possible sense. It's an important aspect, I think, of the work that we do here. Science is really important, but so society and culture, because it makes the science worthwhile, to use a sort of hackneyed explanation for all of that. So we're playing a really important role in the fabric of many institutions and organisations around this part of the world. And then thirdly, health. We have a big and growing medical school and group looking at allied health professions, and of course big links across to the Norwich and Norfolk and other hospitals in this part of the world. One of the things we're trying to do, incidentally, is to establish a school of dentistry. Norwich has the worst oral health of anywhere in the country. It also is the most difficult place to get an NHS dental appointment of anywhere in the country, apart from the Isle of Wight. So University of East Anglia and the University of Isle of Wight, once they've formed it, can both address those things. So we believe if we can get a school of dentistry started here, we can bring people from the region into the university, bring people from outside into the university. We can train dentists. And one of the things we do really well is once we train and educate people, they stay in the hinterland that can service the needs for that. So big plans in that area. And big plans for our research. There's legislation going through the Houses of Parliament at the moment about precision breeding. We have one of the great centres of the world on the Norwich Research Park, who are primed and ready, because of the history of the work done here, to exploit all of that in terms of improving food productivity, in terms of making accessible different areas to grow crops, but also in terms of disease resistance. And a number of world-leading people actually in this room and within a few hundred metres of where we're sitting today are doing this. As George said, we need people to get the message out about really how good things are here, and we need help to attract further talent and further inward investment into this region to keep the whole train moving forward.
Well, can I just say, I never usually need much invitation to be grandiose, so we are tremendously proud of the work that all of you do. Eastern Promise will always be in full-throated support of everything you do, from the UEA to the fantastic work your students, and I'm hoping actually to come back to Ellie Buchan, who's fantastic, and talk some more about something we're hoping to do later on in the year. Always a pleasure to work with the Chamber of Commerce, and Mark, likewise with the Royal Norfolk Agricultural Association. Could you please show your appreciation for the skills panel in the traditional manner? Thank you. I am hugely grateful to Professor David Maguire, Vice-Chancellor of the University of East Anglia, to Norfolk Chambers of Commerce CEO Nova Fairbank, to Dr. Catherine Richards, Principal of East Norfolk Sixth Form College, and Mark Nicholas MBE, Managing Director of the RNAA. Next time, we'll hear from our investment panel on what's needed to boost the amount of capital flowing to startups, to spin-outs and scale-ups in the Norwich ecosystem. And sooner than you think, we'll be putting out the episodes featuring these panels swiftly and with style. And now, every Friday, by about 6 o'clock, mothers of school-aged children will be looking at their partners and dreaming of a weekend away from the shouting, screaming, demands and obstinate behaviour. And just imagine if you can leave the children behind as well. I know, it's usually well before 6 o'clock. But lo, where are your chosen East of England bolt holes for a weekend away from it all? Well, you're in luck, because our region's foremost finaglers of the fantastic are here to wave their wands in another wondrous
crowd sorcery.
Yes, crowd sorcery. Do you know, every week, I'm reminded how many of you want to share the best this region has to offer. And for news of a stunning success, let's get serious for a second. Engineer 49, some serious music if you please. No, that's just a bit too serious. Oh, that's just the right amount of serious, but just in case. Rightio. So then, a big thank you to Claudina Johnston of Source Bioscience, who was kind enough to share that she had taken the advice given on this very feature, taking her brood to the Raw Dinosaur Adventure theme park near Norwich. So congratulations to my crowd sorcerers for that recommendation, and the dinosaur park tells me we're delighted Claudina came and saw us. Oh, like you didn't know that was coming. And if you've acted upon the advice of crowd sorcery...
Crowd sorcery.
Thank you. Then do let me know. But now, dear friends, to business. A subject about which few know more than Deborah Dawson. Bridging legal solutions with new partnerships for our dear friends at Mills and Reeve. Says Deborah. Walberswick is a personal favourite of mine. It's all wild and rustic, and I have very fond memories of crabbing days with the kids. A great pub lunch with lots of fresh seafood. I especially enjoy the walks from Walberswick to Southwold and back, taking in the views of the river, reed beds and wildlife. Heaven. Someone else who's happened upon his own heavenly weekends away in our region is Adam Peed, talent and business development strategist, who says, So Mike, I'm going for a beautiful West Norfolk, and I would choose Watatunga Wildlife Reserve Safari Weekend. Yes, you can safari in Norfolk. But, seeing as I live 3 minutes away, says Adam, I can very easily enjoy it, so not really a getaway, but I encourage others to check it out. So my second choice would be a forest break, Centre Parks or Forest Holidays in Thetford, or maybe West Lexham. Actually, maybe a stay in a cottage on the coast around Wells, Holcombe, Burnham Market and Hunstanton. Wait. Deepdale Camping in Brancaster. Although, Southwold and the Suffolk coast is beautiful. Oh, mind you, I love the Broads. Great Yarmouth is great for a nostalgic trip to my youth. Sorry, Mike, this is too difficult. It's a staycation every weekend for me. Adam, we feel your pain. Another friend of the show, the wonderful, effervescent Tarquin Bennett Coles now. Senior partner at SCI Partners, advisor for Little Bean Journey, pro bono mentor for the Homerton Changemakers, and careers in healthcare supporter for the MBA and EMBA students at the Judge Institute. And for Tarquin, it's a trip to the Broads for fresh air and a stay at Old Saddlery at Nettyshead, eoldsaddlery.co.uk, with a trip to the local community shop, a kayak on the Broads, and a bite at the White Horse. Now, I have checked, and the White Horse is a pub, so if you're imagining Tarquin pootling along the Broads, attempting to chew on a particular pale pony, then shame on you, quite frankly. No, I agree. Of course he wouldn't. Next, let's hear from some of our crowd sorcerers supreme and members of our WhatsApp group. First, Carolyn Reid, Chief Executive Officer of Groundwork East. Carolyn recommends a walk along the beautiful Norfolk coast and lots of delicious food. Well, I certainly recommend both of those too, but she continues. So many places to choose from. The Orange Tree at Thornham, Morstan Hall and Blakeney Hotel, all top choices for an overnight stay. From a future guest on the Eastern Promise podcast, stay tuned for that one, to an honoured previous guest now, Dr. Tammy Dugan, friend of the show and Life Sciences and Healthcare Partnerships Lead at the University of Cambridge. Tammy tells us, I like to occasionally spend a weekend doing a short bed and breakfast stay at Madingley Hall and Gardens. Take a book along and walk the amazing gardens. That's madingleyhall.co.uk/gardens. Thank you, Tammy. And now on to a short, sweet and simple response from yet another former guest. Neil Griffin, Business Support Director, inspiring knowledgeable business support across the UK's leading provider of innovation spaces. Says Neil, Bury St Edmunds! Lots to do there, and the food scene is incredible. We'll hear from another member of the Mills and Reeve family now. Senior Business Development Advisor Gemma Hoskins, who says, "My friend's seaside lodge at Cliff House Holiday Park, Dunwich. Gorgeous coastline and a pub on site. What more do you need?" Let me just check that, Gemma. No, it's true. You don't need anything more. And lastly, our crowdsourcer supreme who suggested this very topic. Michelle Chambers, Business Development Manager at Chaplin Farrant. Those renowned architects, planners and cost consultants. A nice spa break and afternoon tea at Barnum Broom Hotel and a long countryside walk, says Michelle. I notice golf is not mentioned. And that is it for episode 90. Next time, we'll be bringing you the investment panel from the Norwich Food Science Supercluster Summit and flying the flag of freedom for your favourite independence. My plan is to put this there by Monday the 11th of March, so hang tight, it's coming your way. It only remains for me to thank everyone at the Food Science Summit, all my crowdsourcerers, my own Captain Marvel, Sally Osborne, and Darth Vader himself, the king of the cable, Engineer 49. And a huge thank you to you. It's been a while, but we're back. Stay tuned for the next instalment from the Food Science Summit, and until then, bye for now.
To hear other episodes of the Eastern Promise podcast and to find out more about what we do, go to our website at easternpromise.org.uk. Eastern Promise is a Priors-Croft production in association with Mills and Reeve, achieving more together.